Hello, everybody. Today we are talking about chords. What is a chord? Well, let's realize that music can be written in two ways, and often is written in two ways simultaneously. You can think in terms of a melody that goes this way across the staff, that's horizontal. And you can have more than one melody, right? You can have a bass line, you can have other melodies, and they go horizontally. And we can think of music in terms of melodies and voices. But we can also think of music in terms of harmony, vertically, one note stacked on top of another note. And as long as you have more than two notes, it's a chord. Three, four, five, six notes stacked up in some fashion, that's the definition of a chord. Here are two chords right here on my paper. You notice this one chord here? Well, that's the kind of chord we expect to see. This one here looks quite different, but that's a chord too. It's more than two notes, and they're stacked right on top of each other. They're all built differently. Now this chord, the first one, only has three notes. That makes it a triad. And a triad could be also any interval in the world. It could be any set of three notes. But usually in this class, when we say triad, we're going to mean a tertiary triad. There's a triad built on thirds, a tertial triad. And that's this harmony here, where you have a note that goes either from a line to a line to a line. They're thirds apart, or a space to a space to a space. Three notes that are right on top of each other. And the bottom note is then called the root of the chord. The next note, when you have them stacked up like this, just as thirds, that's your third of the chord, and your fifth of the chord, because that's a fifth above the root. That's a third above the root. Third, root, third, fifth. And again, it could be line, 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 or space, 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 but they're made out of thirds. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this chapter, this special kind of triad. And most of our tonal music, what we call functional tonal music, the music from the era of Bach, maybe a little before Bach, through most, at least up to the 20th century, and through pop music and so on, right up to the present day, this is this idea of tonal music built on triads. So let's learn what we can about triads, shall we? So triads come in four flavors. That's major and minor, diminished and augmented. Wow, love those words. So let's first figure out what a major triad is. I'm going to draw one here. So you remember that if we measure an interval from the tonic of any key, so if you're in the key of G, say, and you're measuring an interval from G, if you're in the key, every interval you measure will either be a major interval or a perfect interval. So we know that, say, a G to a B, because B is in the key, is a major third, whereas G to a B flat would then be a minor third. We can also count half steps, 4 half steps in a major third, 3 half steps in a minor third. But as long as we know that we're starting on the tonic of a key, then we know what our intervals are. So let's look at a C major chord in a key signature that's the key signature for C major. Well, look at this. You got a C, E, G. That's all in the key because there are no sharps or flats in the key of C. So here we have our thirds. The first is a major third, and then E to G, well, not E, G, C to G is a perfect fifth because they all come off of the root. And the root says major third, perfect fifth. That's the definition of a major triad. It turns out that second third, the E to G, is a minor third because if you count the number of half steps between in a perfect fifth, you can have room for a major third, and then you have room for a minor third after that. So I'm going to write those on this so we can see them. Okay? So C to E is a major third. C to G is a perfect fifth. And then the top one is a minor third. And that's the definition right there of every major chord. So I can set up a chord anywhere, starting on any note, as long as the root to the third is a major third, and then the root to the top is a perfect fifth, it's a major chord. That's one of our flavors. Now the next flavor is minor. And you might expect it's very similar to the major. So let's just imagine we're in a minor key and we're on the tonic. So I'm going to use the same key signature, so I'll use A minor. And I'm going to stay in natural minor because that's where these things happen. And let's look. Our fifth is still a perfect fifth. That's an A to an E. Perfect fifth. But now the third, A to C, a major third would be A to C sharp. That's A to C natural, so that's a minor third. So it's a minor third, perfect fifth, that gives you a minor chord. A major third, perfect fifth, gives you a major chord. By the way, that tells us what happens if we want to change a major chord to a minor chord. Well, think about it. The perfect fifth is the same, so we don't have to change the outside notes at all. All we have to do is take that major third, which is big, and make it smaller. And since we're not changing the outside notes, what we're going to do is take that middle note and drop it half a step. So if I want to take C major and make it C minor, all I do is add a flat on the E flat. C, E flat G is a minor chord. C, E natural G, a major chord. One has a minor third perfect fifth, one has a major third perfect fifth. That's kind of easy. The other two chords are a little trickier because they don't have perfect fifths. So one of them is called, is a diminished chord. And we use diminished chords a lot in classical music. So a diminished chord is a diminished fifth. It's actually a small fifth. I'm going to write it from C again so you can see that it's a smaller fifth. Then I'll show you where it exists naturally. So it's got a diminished fifth. So it takes a fifth and makes it a half step smaller, either by lowering the top or raising the bottom. So it's a diminished fifth, and then it's got a minor third inside, so that, in fact, every third in it is minor. Here, let me show you what I mean. This is your diminished chord, right here. So remember, C to E natural, we just said was a major third. So this is C to E flat. We shrunk it by lowering the notes. That's a minor third. And we said C to G was a perfect fifth. So we took that and we shrunk it. We made a diminished fifth, a tritone. So it's got a minor third and it's got a diminished fifth. We call this a diminished chord. And with the symbol we use is a little circle like that. So this would be a C diminished chord. You put a little circle up above it. So the diminished chord is done with the little circle. Major chord is done with a capital. Minor chord is a small letter. And diminished chord is a small letter with a little like degree sign, like temperature on it. Now, it's pretty easy to create a diminished chord from a minor chord. Remember, a minor chord is a minor third, which a diminished chord has, and then a perfect fifth. All we got to do is shrink that perfect fifth. So we just put a flat on the fifth degree, and we get a diminished chord. We could do the same thing with a major chord. But we have to flat the third and the fifth, and you can figure that out on your own. I'm going to leave that to you. The last chord is the thing we call an augmented chord. And that I'm going to do at the same notes, the C, E, G combination. So what makes it augmented? The fifth is augmented. So now instead of taking a perfect fifth and shrinking it, we're going to take that perfect fifth and make it bigger. We could do it by moving the bottom note down, but we're going to move the top note up. So take a major chord, take the last note, and make it bigger. And let's see what that looks like. So we know that C to E is a major third. Here we are. We also know C to G is a perfect fifth. So if we put a sharp on it, it becomes an augmented fifth. A major third and an augmented fifth is an augmented chord. And the notation for that, in case you've never seen it before, is just a plus sign. So we can do this with C's and D's, but the most common way we're going to use is Roman numerals. So a 1 chord, for example, if it's major, would be a big capital Roman numeral 1. If it's minor, it'd be a small I for Roman numeral 1. If it's diminished, it'd be that small I with a little circle. And if it's augmented, it'd be the capital I with a plus sign. Whoops, so make sure you can see all those. And those are our 4 chords. They're just 4 variations. If you know what the intervals are, you can figure them out. You can also figure them out if you know how to convert them from a major chord or a minor chord. 4 chords. We're going to talk more about them in the next video.